Gee, it's good to see you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene, where, empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world. My name is August Sabini. I'm the worship associate today. My pronouns are he and him. Those could be loosely interpreted sometimes. With me today is our minister, Reverend Jen Youngsun, our interim director of faith formation, Sarah Sauter, collaborative keyboardist, Suzanne Giordano. You'd think an Italian kid would know how to say that. Our song leaders, Izzy Krecker, Bob Sorentz, and banging on the pot there, Owen Ott. Working behind the scenes, we have Kat Johnson and Philip Stevens, and a wonderful team of ushers and greeters. As you enter this sanctuary, and at any point during the service, you may write your joys and sorrows in the book, light a candle, place a stone in the water, and let that be your prayer today. If you're joining from home, you can write prayers of joy or sorrow into the Zoom chat, which will be open until the start of the sermon. Our ministers will follow up as needed. We gather in worship to find meaning and live more deeply. Worship creates connections among us, within us, and beyond us, calling us to our better selves, calling us to live with wisdom and compassion. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your image of the holy, we're glad you're here. If you're visiting today, we'd love to hear from you and invite you to fill out a visitor form as you feel called. And if you're online, the link is being dropped into the chat right now, kerplunk. Or you can see Izzy today in person. She is our congregational administrator, as well as a terrific song leader. Okay. This morning, we light the flaming chalice for everyone impacted by war just started in Ukraine. As we open our hearts to the suffering of our neighbors, both near and far, let's listen to the words of Zvinya Orlowski, a Ukrainian-American poet. Now, war is kind of heavy. This poem's kind of heavy. It's time to pack your bag and go. You don't know what to take, something easy to carry, everything you could possibly need instantly found. 2 or 3 brushes, soap and a towel, clean underwear just in case your lover meets you, or God. Either way, you should have clean underwear. In a secluded place among the weeds of the dense heavenly forest, I'll meet a rose. Like Blake's symbol of delicate mysticism, the rose that loves the worm. Having allowed him into her alluring womb, she trembles, hidden to avoid me and all poetry. A shame, a bore. Oh, poor flower, lovely dear.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. It's great to see you. One day, very soon, that choir is going to be right here. So that was a little sneak peek and a little teaser for a time to come. I'm the Reverend Jen Youngsun, and I use the pronouns she and her. I serve this beautiful congregation as its settled minister. So we're back in the sanctuary for Sunday worship. And while it feels really, really good to see all of you and for all of us to be together, I know it's not quite the same. I know it's not the same as when you left 2 years ago. There are fewer people here in the sanctuary. There are a whole bunch online right now joining us. There are new faces around here too, including this one from the pulpit. We've got no choir yet, and we've got no coffee yet. And so things do feel different. And there's so much changing at such a fast pace, not only here at church, but in our lives outside of this place. Each of us handles change very differently, don't we? Some of us kind of glide through change effortlessly, it seems. And others find too much change too fast to be destabilizing, to be upsetting and disorienting. And so I just want to acknowledge that I know many of you here are tending to your own grief, and you're tending to your own sense of loss. This week especially, those feelings of loss are wrapped around the grief for the world as it is now. Events like the invasion of Ukraine wake us up and remind us that most of our fellow earthlings live very precariously. Most people living on this earth are living on the edge of safety and survival. Global events allow us to think about what it means to be an American on the world stage, to ponder what that means today and how that has changed over time. This year, this July, our country is going to turn 246 years old, which means that we're just getting started, right? We are just getting started. This morning, we're going to conclude our month-long spiritual practice of widening the circle by reflecting on how the we the people of the United States, have been pushing that circle wider and wider. It's been frustrating and imperfect many times, and yet we keep at it. So what is the great American myth that you grew up with? The one that you were born into? Or if you emigrated to the United States, what was the great American dream that you or your ancestors reached for? If you were brought here without consent, what is the American dream that you want to sing to your children and to your grandchildren? This morning, we arrive from many different places, carrying our own hardships and grief and worry and unease and dreams and hopes into this place. No matter what you are bringing into this sacred gathering, I want to welcome you to worship, because we come to worship, to shape and give form to our highest values and our deepest concerns. And every time we do that, folks, every time we do that, it is a reason to rejoice. So come, bring your whole selves into this time and into this place. Come, let us worship together. Oh, I know we were supposed to hum, but I think I found myself singing. Accidentally. Got caught up in the moment. Our annual pledge drive starts officially next weekend. This is our primary way of raising funds for the good work of this church, and it's this time of year when we start to think about how we want to make a financial contribution to this community so that we can keep creating this beloved community here and in the greater world. Today, we're going to hear from two of our members as they talk about their love for this community. So first, we'll hear from Laura Schwingle, and then Bob Moss is going to join us via video.
Hello, good morning. Hello. My name is Laurel Schwingle, she, her, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about why I pledged to my church, UCCE. I came to UCCE in 2017. I and my family were going through life stressors, and I needed spiritual support. I remember thinking during that first service, how have I never been here before? I was raised atheist by hippies, taught to honor the unique ability of individuals and to be environmentally conscious, and when I read UU's principles, I said, yes. UCCE has become my spiritual and religious home and a place to raise my daughter Victoria with religious and spiritual responsibility. I am so glad to be able to support so many good causes just by going to church. While sitting in service, I am supporting universal health care, social and racial justice, environmental responsibility, and so much more. I, as one person, a working mom, cannot personally tear down City Hall and our unjust society and world. But by giving my time, my talent, and my treasure, as by supporting UCCE, I am supporting the movement towards justice and right relations with the world. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bob Moss. Carolyn and I came from Christian church backgrounds. When we came to Eugene 8 years ago, we wanted a change, and we decided that the UCCE was and is a great fit for us, with its diversity of beliefs and congregants that are active, social, and caring. My dad was a Presbyterian minister, so I saw the church from a different vantage point. In my early years, I saw the budgeting struggles and headaches that make it all work, from small pastorates to larger ones. It always seemed to be a tough nut to crack. And in the early years, I saw how my father struggled to make ends meet. In spite of that, he always was the first in line to give. He told his congregants, don't give until it hurts. Give till it feels good. Our church is diverse in its needs, staffing to stamps, from maintenance to upkeep and electricity, the vibrant programs that engender a spirit of participation in all of us don't come without a cost. Our ability to contribute is as diverse as the beliefs we each hold. And we would ask that all of us go to our quiet place, wherever that may be, and ponder how we can give until it feels good.
Good morning again, everyone. Appears that our children really like each other, and they like each other so well that most of them sit back here in the back together. So here I am walking to the back to collect some wisdom from the youngest, because I know there is wisdom here. There's a fresh way of looking at things, and I'm going to ask you all a question. What does it mean to be an American? Think about that for a minute. When you think of yourself as an American, what do you think? Anyone? You know, you've been with me 1 week. You know, if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to pick on you. So what does it mean? Yes.
It means that you live in America.
It means that you live in America. Absolutely. What else?
There's like some certain beliefs that we have as Americans that we may have, I guess. I don't know.
Some certain shared beliefs, absolutely.
Usually you're born in America.
Usually you're born in America to call yourself an American. Not everybody, but usually. Anyone else? What does it mean to be an American? All ages, absolutely.
Yesterday at work, I heard a lady talking about her guns and how proud she is of her guns, and her the stepmom at home doesn't like the guns, but
The right to bear arms, that is part of being an American. What else? What else is part of being an American? Over here, wisdom. Anyone? Anyone? Well, all of us think differently about that question, what does it mean to be an American? From young to old.
freedom.
Freedom. Freedom. Some of us came to freedom earlier, some of us came to freedom later, but yes, that is part of being an American. Anyone else like to share a little wisdom? What does it mean to be an American? Over here.
My dad told me that it meant that you took care of the land and made sure that it was not polluted and flooded, and but you took care of it, then you belong.
For spacious skies, for golden waves of grain. All of these things mean being an American. Thank you for your attention.
In the autumn of 1967, at the anti-war demonstration at the Pentagon, I looked around and I noticed that an awful lot of us were dressed like Disney characters. Davy Crockett, Jiminy Cricket, Snow White, etc. And the thought occurred to me that we had grown up as Disney's children, gathered around TV sets, being told stories that were central to the understanding of our culture, its history, and its place in the world. These stories illustrated a myth. We Americans were conquering, as Woodrow Wilson said, to make the world safe for democracy. Or like Superman said, for truth, justice, and the American way. But why were we slaughtering Asian peasants in support of a tin pot dictator halfway around the world? When one reads the first 4 books of the Bible, one is reading about a people escaping from oppression and then conquering and occupying a promised land. Much of what is described in the book of Joshua is understandable today as genocide. But upon reading ancient history, one learns that this was typical of movements and conquests at that time. These events were celebrated then with holidays by the people who benefited from them. Growing up in New York State during the 1950s, I learned a similar story of liberation and conquest by Europeans in North America. Those events were also celebrated in holidays. Washington and Lincoln's birthdays, the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving. I didn't notice the similarity until I was trying to teach history to at-risk adolescents, whom I realized were not familiar or attached to these stories. At the time that I was teaching, I was taking a few anthropology courses and learning about the role of myth in culture. The anthropologist Bronislaw Malinowski revised the way anthropologists look at myths. He described them as functional, meaning that to examine a myth properly, one must first look at the culture for its meaning. A myth can be looked at as a framework upon which are organized the decisions made by that culture. And a culture's success, therefore, depends on how those decisions work with the circumstances the culture encounters. Of course, problems occur when new circumstances arise, and the myth, whatever its success in the past, no longer supports successful decision-making. I began to suspect that my students were not being taught in elementary school by teachers like mine, and that they had, those teachers had an understanding of America that reflected the turmoil over civil rights and the war in Vietnam. Couldn't have been my teaching. These kids came from broken homes in unstable communities. As I said, they were not familiar with or attached to those stories. And what I was trying to teach was not easy for them to assimilate. When I was teaching about the Croton Aqueduct, for instance, I taught about it bringing fresh water to New York City, and one of my students remarked, "Damn, I thought Aqueduct was just a great place to hang out and party." You know, there's an argument presented that teaching of history should not include facts which do not support the myth which is central to our identification as Americans. Objection to the teaching of critical race theory or the removal of statues of Confederate war heroes or to the 1619 Project. These are examples. I can understand the feelings, though, behind these objectors because I share a common heritage with them. My mother's ancestors were Scots-Irish. Some of them were with Daniel Boone conquering and settling west of the Appalachians. One of them died fighting for the South in the Civil War. Another wrote in his memoir that he had purchased, transported, and sold a human being. Of course, he didn't say it like that. I grew up, however, in an integrated community. There were civil rights leaders in that community. But there I was, walking around proudly wearing my Confederate gray hat with the stars of bars on it. How crazy was that? My father's mother grew up in a little village near Genoa, where they claim Christopher Columbus as a native son and have erected a towering statue of him in their town square. The first piece I wrote in grade school was about Christopher Columbus. I may have plagiarized the last sentence, but Mrs. Peters let me slide. Now, it is uncomfortable for us that the historical facts in question do not support the myth we are accustomed to. It is not the role of historians to support any myth, but to examine stories, find evidence, publish understandings based on that evidence. My favorite history teacher used to say that if it has not been written, then it is not history. And I say, fine, but archaeology, anthropology, psychology, and plenty of other good sciences can tell us a lot about who we are. And while history and other sciences are important to our survival, though, they are not enough. And this, I think, is where myth comes in. Myth deals with more than survival. Myth touches our spirit, and without spirit, survival becomes meaningless. In the movie Jaws, where Richard Dreyfuss's character realizes the enormity of the shark he is confronting, he says memorably, "We need a bigger boat." Yeah, we remember. Well, I think that in the face of the enormity of climate change, overpopulation, and seemingly endless warfare, we need a bigger myth.
Now I invite you into a time of prayer, meditation, contemplation. Get as comfortable as you can get. And if it feels okay to you, close your eyes. This is metta, the loving kindness meditation. And as always, we begin with self. Begin by picturing yourself, thinking about yourself. What part of you today longs for tenderness? What part of you longs for compassion? Smile to yourself and say, "May I be happy. May I be well. May I be at peace." And now turn your attention to those you love the most, the ones closest to you, the ones that are easy to love. Imagine their faces in front of you. Say to them, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace." Next, imagine the people you know a little bit. These are people in your church community, they're at work, they're at school. Maybe you don't know the particulars of their lives, you may not know the exact joys or sorrows that they hold, but you care about them. And so you picture them in your mind, and you say to them, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace." And now bring to your mind someone that you're at odds with. Maybe someone that you're fighting with right now, or you're in conflict with. Maybe it's someone you just don't care for right now. Maybe someone you even consider an enemy. Bring their name or their face into your consciousness and say to them, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace." And finally, let us pray for all the non-human creatures on this living planet, for all the creatures that help to sustain our very lives. May you forgive us our trespasses. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace. Amen.
Today's poem was written by Langston Hughes. He was born in Joplin, Missouri in 1902, and he would go on to help establish the Harlem Renaissance, a black intellectual movement in the early 20th century. In a 1926 essay, Hughes described this group of artists, philosophers, writers, saying, "We younger Negro artists who create now, intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful and ugly too. The tom-tom cries, the tom-tom laughs. If colored people are pleased, we are. If they are not, their displeasure doesn't matter either. We build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how, and we stand at the top of the mountain, free within ourselves. Here is Langston Hughes's poem, I Too. The text is etched into the stone walls of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is the newest Smithsonian Museum in Washington. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare to say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America.
The preamble to the U.S. Constitution lays out a big welcome table, doesn't it? Seems like it would be clear what we, the people, means. But for a very, very, very long time, the definition of people was limited, and today it still leaves many out. By the time Langston Hughes was born, the institution of chattel slavery had been abolished. The 13th Amendment stopped the slavery trade, but it did nothing to guarantee any rights to African Americans. Racism during Hughes's time was visible, tangible, and deadly. And yet, the end of slavery widened the circle enough that brilliant Americans like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Bessie Smith and Louis Armstrong found each other and created some of the most influential art of our times. We, the people of the United States, imperfect and flawed as we are, keep striving for the American dream. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. So what is this American dream? Is there just one dream? Or are there many? Has it stayed the same? Is it still relevant today? As Augie observed, the American dream he grew up with was all about domination, clearly defined enemies, and economic prosperity. These were the baby boomer years. And even though we weren't engaged in active battle, the people still wanted and needed to fight an enemy. And that was the godless, the atheist, the communist. Thanks to the rise in the National Association of Evangelicals, Christianity, toxic masculinity, and military dominance all fused into this powerful American myth that was all wrapped up in God and the flag. At least this is how one author, Christine Cobbs-Dumez, sees it. She's a professor of history and gender studies and has written a best-selling book entitled Jesus and John Wayne. She takes all of these threads and makes connections. And, reading through it, I started to wonder that, well, maybe that's the reason that a long time ago you used to see flags in almost every church. Do you remember that? A flagpole in the sanctuary, and we hardly see that anymore. That's also why the national anthem and America the Beautiful were both in our hymnals, the Unitarian hymnals as well, until recent revisions took that out. Much of the American dream in those years after World War II were about economic prosperity. Everyone, they said, everyone had an equal chance in this dream. But as we know, many soldiers and sailors who came home found that that American dream wasn't available to them. Over 1.2 million Black veterans who had served during that war were shut out of the GI Bill program. They were also shut out of affordable housing specifically built for returning veterans. The negative economic impact of just those two exclusions continue to be felt to this day and will continue to be felt for generations to come until we, the people, find the moral courage to confront that truth. We, the people, moved through those years, moved through time, and the next generation came. We call them Gen X. Michelle Obama and Molly May and me, actually, born around the same time. Michelle Obama was born in 1964, and the civil rights movement was well underway and in full swing. Every person who felt left out of the big American dream, they came out to protest during those years to claim their part, a part of a dream, a new American dream, a dream that was bigger and wider, a truly open and welcome table. And also people from all different religions came into the streets to claim that peace and nonviolence and reconciliation, those were the true claims of faith. So fast forward to 2008, and there's Michelle Obama on the campaign trail, and she said one day, "For the first time in my adult life, I am really proud of my country." Do you remember that? I knew exactly what she meant when she said that, and so did a lot of us who knew that the promise of America was still out of reach for millions and millions of its citizens. But her opponents were very quick to criticize those comments. Do you remember that? Didn't she witness the Velvet Revolution that toppled communism without violence, they asked? Didn't Michelle Obama see the widening of human rights for women and for LGBTQ and for people of color? Couldn't she just be thankful for that? Yes, we did see all of that. We saw great waves of change. And we also saw how the love of money and power became the unchallenged God of our nation. We saw how economic inequalities impacted people of African descent more than others. We saw a population explosion in the prison of incarcerated brown and Black men. And we witnessed lives cut short and the well-being of communities decimated. Have you ever heard of the country singer named Willie Jones? Somebody? He's so good. He has this song called The American Dreams, in which he sings, "Proud to be a black man, living in the land of the brave and the free. Yeah, I'm all American, and that American dream ain't cheap. We've come a long way, still have a long way to go. When you're living as a black man, it's a different kind of American dream." And it really is. The American dream is getting wider, but we still have such a long way to go. So now here we are in the year 2022. Where is the American dream today? Does it even make sense to have an American dream? Last month, you may remember that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell refused to allow a Senate vote on the John Lewis voting rights bill, saying, well, the concern is misplaced, because if you look at the statistics, African American voters are voting in just as high a percentage as Americans. Yeah, he really said that. So we all make slips of the tongue, right? We say things accidentally we don't mean. But in this case, I do believe that the good senator has expressed a long-held sentiment that most people don't say out loud. And yet it's part of that myth that to be American is really to be white, and to be American is to be Christian. Have you noticed, though, that today, in 2022, more people are willing to say these things out loud? There are people right now in our neighborhoods who live next door to us or behind us. There are people in our town, in Eugene and Springfield. There are people here who are willing to fight for a particular and outdated American myth, and they are willing to fight for it. We've seen that. They're willing to take up arms for it. We've seen that. They are willing to take the American flag for their ill-fated battle. I don't know why we let them take the flag. I say ill-fated because as scary as white nationalists are, and as much chaos and destruction and death that they are willing to bring to our cities, we have proven that this myth no longer holds. It really isn't big enough. It will not stand. We are gonna need a bigger boat. Return to Christian roots and evangelical family values? No. People have already said, we're not interested. Just take a look at the Pew Research polls showing that people are moving away in droves from that kind of thinking. Teach women to be subservient and submit to their husbands? No, no, no. Way too late. Women have found their power, and they are not giving it up. Elect a leader who acts and talks more like John Wayne? Well, we tried that. It didn't work. Work harder, pray harder, and you'll prosper financially? Nobody is buying that anymore. Today, nearly half of all millennials say that the whole American dream of forward progress and upward mobility is dead. It's meaningless to them. Maybe that's a good thing. I recently watched this video of a 7-year-old girl who had just become a US citizen. She and her parents immigrated to the United States when she was just a baby, from Iraq. She is beautifully bilingual. just as a lot of our grandkids and great-grandkids are, right? She loves art, she loves math, she loves school, and she says she loves America because she knows that she can be anything she wants to be here. I still believe in that part of the American dream, the freedom, and one of our youth said that earlier, freedom. I believe that the freedom to be and to do whatever makes you fully human and feel fully alive, that is an essential part still of the American dream. And the corresponding responsibility goes with it. And that is the responsibility to dismantle all that keeps the people from experiencing that kind of freedom. If the welcome table of the United States were truly opened, we would find a way to feed everyone, to house everyone, and to provide the basic necessities of life to every person. Now, I may be speaking with the optimism of an immigrant whose parents chose to come here as part of their dream. So I may be naive and overly optimistic, but I have not given up on this country. With eyes wide open to the fact that I know our national leaders are just as likely to torture and assassinate, cover up, lie, make disappear, harass, incarcerate as any other world leaders. I am acutely aware of the oppressive systems and the unjust institutions that stand in the way of liberty and equity, and yet I still believe in the American story where the table gets bigger and bigger. Langston Hughes wrote that poem that Augie read earlier at a time of great personal hope and optimism. And he says that he found such hope in the bodies and souls of his people and in the power of transcendent change. And I too find hope in the growing numbers of Black, brown, indigenous, non-binary, differently abled, neurodivergent bodies making their way and taking their rightful place at the American table. May it be ever so. Amen.
Okay, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.
And now, as you go into your day and into your brand new week, carry freedom in your heart. Love your neighbor. Love one another. Go in peace, everyone. Bye-bye.